This episode takes a lighter turn as we explore the history and origins of April Fool's Day, but as always, that doesn't mean we won't challenge a few ideas along the way. Some of what you'll hear blends humor, history, and a bit of perspective on how easily people can be misled.
And before we get started, a couple of quick shout outs. Happy 9-year anniversary to my wife, Theresa. Thank you for always being there. And also, I want to give a shout out. Happy birthday to my nephew, Brandon. We appreciate you both being part of the story behind everything we do here. So sit back, enjoy the ride, and maybe don't believe everything you hear today. All right. Quick question. Who woke up this morning already suspicious of everything? Because today is that one day out of the entire year where you can't trust your phone, your friends, the internet, or honestly, even yourself, because April Fool's Day is in full effect. But here's the thing, most people don't stop and think about. Where did this even come from? Like, seriously, who woke up one day and decided, you know what would be fun? Let's all just lie to each other for entertainment and make it a tradition. And more importantly, how did it go from harmless pranks and fake headlines to a world where sometimes it's actually hard to tell what's real and what isn't, even outside of April 1st? So tonight we're digging into the origins of April Fool's Day, the history, the theories, the weird traditions, and yeah, we're probably going to have some fun with it along the way. All right, let's bring in the crew, because if there's ever a day where I fully expect chaos, bad takes, and at least one completely made-up fact, it's today. Brian is here, already convinced April Fool's Day was invented by the government to test how gullible people are. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if he tries to prove it. Rachel is here, trying to keep at least some level of truth in this episode, even though today might be the hardest day of the year to do that. Daniel is locked in, connecting April Fool's Day to ancient rituals, secret societies, and probably something that somehow ties back to a calendar change nobody talks about. And Skylar is here, ready to remind us that while pranks can be funny, they can also cross lines, especially in a world where misinformation spreads fast. And me? I'm just trying to figure out how this became an actual holiday, and why we all just agreed to go along with it. So let's start with the basics. April Fool's Day has been around for centuries, but here's the catch. Nobody actually agrees on where it started. Some say it dates back to the 1500s when France switched from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, and people who didn't get the memo or refused to follow it were mocked as April Fools. Others say it goes back even further, to ancient Roman festivals like Hilaria, where people dressed up, played games, and basically spent the day messing with each other. And then there's the idea that it's tied to seasonal change, springtime, unpredictability, chaos, nature flipping the script, kind of like the ultimate built-in prank. So here's the question. Is April Fool's Day just a harmless tradition that evolved over time? Or does it say something deeper about how easily people can be misled, even when they know they should be paying attention? Brian, I'm coming to you first.
All right, I'm just going to say it. April Fool's Day might be the only honest day of the year, because at least on this day, people admit they're messing with you. The other 364 days, same game, just nobody calls it a joke. You've got media headlines that read like satire but are dead serious, politicians saying things that sound like a prank but somehow aren't, and people online sharing stuff without even checking if it's real. And we're supposed to act like this is the one day we need to be careful? Come on, at least April 1st has the decency to warn you up front. Hey, you might get played today. The rest of the year, you're just out there raw-dogging reality, hoping what you're hearing is true. And as far as where it came from, look, I've heard all the theories. Calendar change, ancient festivals, people getting confused about what day it is. But honestly, it tracks perfectly with human nature. People love fooling each other. We love feeling like we're in on something that someone else isn't. That little moment where you get to say, gotcha, that's the whole game. But here's where it gets interesting. We've taken that instinct and turned it into an entire culture. Now it's not just pranks, it's narratives, spin, selective truth, outrage cycles. So yeah, April Fool's Day might have started as a joke, but at this point, it kind of feels like the rest of the year is just the extended version. And today's the only day everybody's honest about it.
You know what? I hate how much that actually makes sense, because you're right. Today is the only day where people at least admit they might be messing with you. The rest of the time, it's packaged, polished, and presented like it's absolute truth, and you're just supposed to take it at face value. And I think that's what makes this whole thing interesting. It's not just about pranks, it's about trust. Who you trust, what you trust, and how easy it is to blur that line between what's real and what's not. But I'm going to bring this back a little bit because not everything has to be some grand manipulation or conspiracy. Sometimes people just like to have fun, mess around, and not take things so seriously for a day. So, Rachel, let me ask you, is April Fool's Day just harmless fun that people are overthinking? Or do you think there's actually something to what Brian's saying about how it reflects a bigger issue with truth and trust today?
I think it's both, honestly, and that's what makes it interesting. On one hand, April Fool's Day really is just harmless fun for most people. It's a break from routine, a chance to laugh, to play a joke, to not take everything so seriously for a moment. And historically, a lot of these traditions came from times of change: calendar shifts, seasonal transitions, festivals where people flipped social roles for a day. So there's a very human, very normal side to all of this. People have always looked for moments to release tension, and humor has always been one of the safest ways to do that. But at the same time, Brian isn't entirely wrong either. What used to be simple pranks has evolved into something more complicated because the environment we live in now is completely different. Information moves faster, narratives spread instantly, and the line between real and fake isn't always obvious anymore. So when you drop a day like April Fool's into a world that's already struggling with trust, it kind of amplifies that issue. It's not that the day itself is the problem, it's that it reflects how easily people can be influenced, especially when they're not taking the time to question what they're seeing or hearing.
Yeah, and that's where I think this gets layered because you're right, it is fun until it's not, until something spreads a little too far or people start believing something that was never meant to be taken seriously. And in today's world, that line gets crossed fast. What starts as a joke can turn into a headline, then a conversation, and before you know it, people are arguing about something that wasn't even real to begin with. And I think that's the part that sticks with me. How quickly something small can turn into something big just because people don't stop to question it. But Daniel, I already know you've been waiting on this one, so let's go there. Do you think April Fool's Day is just a historical accident that stuck around? Or is there something deeper behind why humans have always leaned into deception, role reversal, and controlled chaos like this?
I don't think it's accidental at all. I think it's patterned behavior that shows up across different civilizations in different forms, and that's what makes it worth paying attention to. When you look at things like the Roman festival of Hilaria, or even medieval traditions where social roles were temporarily reversed, there's a consistent theme: structured chaos, a moment where the normal order is disrupted, where truth becomes flexible, and where people are allowed, almost encouraged, to step outside the rules. That doesn't just happen randomly. Societies build those moments in on purpose, whether consciously or not, because it gives people an outlet, but it also reveals something deeper about how easily perception can be shifted. And here's where it gets interesting, because once you recognize that people are comfortable participating in a system where reality can be temporarily altered, even as a joke, it raises a bigger question. How temporary is it really? April Fool's Day might be the obvious version, the one with pranks and fake headlines, but it mirrors something much larger: the idea that truth can be shaped, bent, or reframed depending on context. And if people willingly engage with that, even for fun, it suggests that the boundary between reality and perception is thinner than we like to admit. So no, I don't think it's just tradition. I think it's a reflection of how adaptable human belief really is.
All right. See, that's what I was waiting for right there, because now we've gone from who put salt in the sugar to maybe reality isn't as solid as we think it is. And that's a pretty big jump for a Wednesday episode. But I'll say this, you're not wrong about one thing. People do get comfortable when the lines blur a little, whether it's for fun, for entertainment, or just because they don't feel like digging into what's real and what's not. There's a level of trust that gets handed over without much resistance. And I think that's where this whole thing starts to matter more than just a once-a-year prank day. But let's bring this back to the human side of it. Skylar, I want your take on this. Is April Fool's Day still just harmless fun in today's world? Or do you think there's a point where it crosses into something that actually contributes to confusion, misinformation, or even harm?
I think it really depends on how it's used because there's definitely a version of April Fool's Day that's harmless and fun. Friends joking with each other, families laughing, people just taking a break from everything being so serious all the time. And honestly, we need more of that. Life is stressful enough as it is, and having a day where people can laugh, loosen up, and not feel like everything has to be perfect or heavy all the time, that's not a bad thing. Humor can bring people together, and in a lot of cases, that's exactly what this day does. But where I think it gets tricky is when the jokes stop being harmless and start playing on people's fears, confusion, or trust. In a world where misinformation already spreads fast, even something meant as a joke can take on a life of its own. Not everyone sees it at the same time. Not everyone realizes it's a prank, and suddenly you've got people reacting to something that was never real in the first place. So it's not about getting rid of the tradition. It's about being aware of the environment we're in now. What might have been funny years ago can hit differently today, especially when people are already overwhelmed trying to figure out what's true and what isn't.
Yeah, and I think that's where this all lands, right in the middle of everything we've been talking about tonight. Because on one side, you've got the tradition, the humor, the history, the idea that sometimes it's okay to not take life so seriously. And on the other side, you've got the reality of the world we're living in now, where information moves fast, trust is thin, and it doesn't take much for something small to turn into something bigger than it was ever meant to be. And maybe that's the real takeaway from all of this. April Fool's Day didn't change. We did. The way we communicate, the way we consume information, the way we react to things, it's all different now. So what used to be a simple joke carries a little more weight, whether we realize it or not. But at the end of the day, I don't think the answer is to shut it down or overanalyze every single thing. I think it's just being aware, knowing when something's a joke, knowing when to question what you're seeing, and maybe, just maybe, not taking everything at face value the second it pops up in front of you. Because if there's one thing today should remind us of, it's that not everything is exactly what it seems.
All right, since it is April Fool's Day, let me ask you something. How many times have you been fooled today already? Once? Twice? Or are you still out here trusting everything you read on the internet? Bold strategy. But here's one thing that's not a joke. Data and Dissonance merge. No tricks, no gotchas, no just kidding at checkout. Just real gear, real quality, and designs that actually say something. Whether it's the hoodies, the hats, the bumper stickers, or the mugs, you're not just buying merch, you're backing the message, speak truth, stir thought. And let's be honest, in a world full of noise, confusion, and people getting played left and right, wearing something that actually stands for something real, that's a pretty solid move. So if you're gonna get fooled today, don't let it be your style. Head over to the Data and Dissonance shop and grab your gear. Because this part, not a prank.
You know, it's funny. We started tonight talking about April Fool's Day, pranks, jokes, where it came from. And somewhere along the way, it turned into something a little deeper than that. Because yeah, on the surface, it's just a day where people mess with each other, laugh, and maybe get one over on someone. But underneath all of that, it's really about perception, about how easily things can be twisted, believed, or taken at face value without ever stopping to ask, is this actually real? And maybe that's the bigger lesson here. Not just for today, but for every day. Because we live in a time where information is constant, opinions are loud, and truth sometimes feels like it's buried under layers of noise. And if there's anything April Fool's reminds us of, it's that not everything is what it seems. And more importantly, it's on us to slow down, question things, and not just accept whatever gets put in front of us. That doesn't mean living paranoid or skeptical of everything, but it does mean thinking for yourself. And that's something that never goes out of style. But I'll tell you this too. Not everything has to be heavy. Not everything has to be a battle or a debate. Sometimes it's okay to laugh, to have fun, to not take life so seriously for a minute. And honestly, those moments, the ones where you're laughing with people you care about, where you're just present, just enjoying the day, Those are the ones that stick with you longer than anything else. And on that note, I just want to take a second because today isn't just April Fool's Day for me. It's also a milestone, 9 years with my wife, Theresa. And through everything, ups, downs, all the chaos life throws at you, having someone who stands by you, who's there through it all, that's real. That's not a joke. That's not a prank. That's something you don't take for granted. So Theresa, thank you for everything, for being there, for sticking it out, and for being part of this journey with me. Because at the end of the day, in a world where a lot of things can feel uncertain, where lines get blurred and truth can feel harder to find, it's the real things that matter. The people, the moments, the things you know without a doubt aren't fake. So yeah, have your fun today, laugh a little, maybe even get someone good with a prank, but don't forget what's real when it matters. And as always, remember to speak truth, stir thought.
This episode of Data and Dissonance is brought to you by the world behind the mic, because the conversation doesn't stop when the episode ends. If you're into stories that dive deep into power, control, and the unseen forces shaping the world around us, check out the Caleb Rourke thriller series by Artie J. Roy III. The Covenant Protocol, The Prophet Directive, and Black Echo Rising aren't just action-packed reads. They explore the same kinds of questions we ask here on the show, just in a world where the stakes are a whole lot higher. And if music is more your lane, the sound of Data and Dissonance lives there too. The album Uncaged brings that raw, grunge-inspired energy, songs rooted in struggle, pain, resilience, and everything that comes with fighting your way through life's hardest moments. Then, on the other side of that, you've got Four Wheelers and Hallelujah, a country album grounded in faith, freedom, family, and the kind of stories that hit close to home. Tracks like Stand Tall Charlie carry that message of strength and pride that runs through everything we do here. So whether you're reading, listening, or tuning in every day, you're part of it, and that's what keeps this going.